start a meal with a very small, can be just 4 ounces, just a half a cup of soup. It's filling. It's very good. You don't go, you don't go crazy. You don't completely fill up on it, but it gives you a moment to sort of rest before you move into all the rest of the food. And it's warming. It tastes good. It's warm at this time of year in New England when it's getting a little cold out. It gives you good fluids. We all need to get extra fluids at this time of year as well, when the indoor air and the outdoor air are so dry. So that's why soup. So this soup, which the recipe starts on page 4 of the booklet, it's really a simple soup. It is just a little bit of butter, shallots, butternut squash, apples, a little salt, and a tiny bit of brown sugar at the very end. So it really is a blank slate. There are no extra seasonings in it, no extra herbs or spices. Judy's going to talk about all those herbs and spices, but I'm going to just walk through the process of making it. Okay, so this is a shallot. Odd little creatures related to onions, obviously. They taste like onions. They've got a nice flavor. They can be a little bit sharp, but they're really good. They can be kind of a pain to peel. It looks almost, this one actually doesn't. Often, like these two were joined together. It looks like cloves, like a garlic clove would be. Oh, can you guys see? Where is it? There we are. See, they were joined together. So it's a little bit like a garlic clove, and in fact, you'll often see shallots, if you're looking for them in the grocery store, they will be near they will often be near the garlic. At Russo's, they're in the bin right next to the garlic. So with the shallots, you want to mince them up pretty fine. Now all of those shallots and stuff are going to get strained out of the final soup, so they don't have to be really, really fine, but you'll get more flavor out of them the more surface area there is on the shallot. So to chop a shallot, to mince a shallot, you want to cut it horizontally first, and then we're going to make a few cuts vertically, and then we're going to cut it all the way down. My shallots are here. They're in the Dutch oven here. I've thrown in a half a stick of butter, 4 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter in here. And I'm going to just go ahead and put that on the stove now, so that what we want is for the butter to melt and the shallots to just soften up a little bit. Okay, now the thing I like best about this recipe is that it does not require me to peel this monster. I hate peeling butternut squashes. It does, however, require me to cut it. And cutting a squash like this can be scary. So very important to have a sharp chef's knife. If you can, get your knives sharpened. Years and years and years ago, my husband bought me this little glove. This is a glove that fishermen use. It's called a fillet glove. So fishermen do not chop their fingers off when they're cutting up, when they're filleting fish. I'm going to use it today just because I'm superstitious. Now, the other thing I love about this recipe is that you don't waste a thing. We're actually going to use the seeds and all of this fiber in here to flavor the water that the squash is cooking in. So we're gonna just scrape them out. Now, this spoon that Natalie can tell you that there are little devices on the market to help you scrape out your squash. You can use a spoon. This spoon happens to be really thin right at the tip here, so it works really well. You could even use, I don't know, like a grapefruit spoon because it's got that serrated edge. But you just want to clean it out as much as you can. So that's pretty clean there. And we are going to use it, so I'm throwing it into a bowl and not directly into my compost bin. All right, so there's my seeds and stuff. And then the recipe just, what we're going to do with this, instead of peeling it and chopping it the way you would do with many squash recipes, soup recipes, where you're just cooking it on the stove and not roasting it first, is you would have to peel it. In this case, all we're doing is chunking it into quarters. And it's going to steam in the pot, and then we're going to be able to scrape the flesh right out and away from the peel, the rind. Now that my shallots are nice and soft, what I'm going to do is take these seeds that we collected. I'm going to throw them right into the pot with the shallots and the butter. They're also going to saute. And what the recipe says is that they should saute for about 4 minutes, because they're gonna sort of turn the butter a bright orangey saffron color. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna let that saute. While that's happening, I'm gonna deal with the other element of this recipe, which is apple. So it's a good idea to peel them. Honestly, that's probably all you have to do. I'm gonna also core the apple. For this recipe, because my squash for tonight, because my squash was a little small, I'm only going to use 2 apples because they're pretty big apples. The third apple is actually going to be for garnish. So I will talk about that in a bit. There's the squash and the shallots in there, and the butter, and everything is looking and smelling yummy. Now, we're going to add 6 cups of water to this. I dare say we could probably just slap everything right in there, but it might get a little messy. What we're going to use is a steamer basket. If you don't have a steamer basket, you can make all of this in like a pasta pot with a removable steamer thing. You can, what else could you do? I think you could basically just lay the squash in there if you need it, if you wanted to. But we're going to use this nifty little steamer basket. I got that. This is made by Cuisinart. It was like 12 bucks at Target. So we're going to set that in there, and we're going to put the squash in flesh side down. Doesn't really matter. Like this, and we're going to throw the apples in as well. Look at this guy. All right. So that is going to get covered. It's going to go back on the stove for 30 minutes.
Following on from what Ilana was just saying, if you do not have a steamer pot or any form of steaming, then you can leave out the seeds and just put everything in the pot together. It's going to be pureed anyway. So if it's pureed anyway, then you're just going to have it all mixed in together, but you'd have to leave out the seeds, otherwise that would not be good. All right, she is currently using water in her soup. You might want to have a flavoring rather than just plain water. If it's a sweet soup, this one has sugar added. You might want to have apple juice or apple cider as part of the liquid or all of the liquid. If you make it into a savory soup without sugar, you might want to use chicken stock. So those are other varieties of liquid that you can use. In the handout that you have, which you may or may not have printed, there is a vegetable stock that I make from roasting vegetables. And that's on pages 7 to 8 in the back of the handout. And basically what you do is you take chunks of vegetables all around 2 inches or so and put them on a baking pan with some oil, perhaps a little bit of salt if you want salt. And you put it in your oven, perhaps at around, this is all very approximate, perhaps around 350, 375, 400. And you let the vegetables char, and then you turn them over so they get charred on both sides. And then you'll take those vegetables, put them in a pot, scrape up the fond, which are the charred pieces on the bottom of the pan, and fill it all up in a pot with water and seasonings. You might want to throw in some herbs. You can throw in some onion skins. You can throw in the ends of, say, ends of carrots or ends of celery, or some scrunchy old vegetables that really aren't too nice looking anymore, but they're not moldy. And then just cook it all down until it becomes a nice, rich, almost looking like a beef stock. And then when it tastes, you just keep tasting it and make it so that it tastes good to you, adding salt, pepper, herbs, spices, whatever appeals to you. And then once it is cooked to a pleasant flavor, a pleasant aroma, your kitchen will smell wonderful. Let it cool off for a bit and strain it. Press out all of the moisture from the vegetables, which can then go in, if you have a compost, they'll go in the compost, because at that point they're not really worth eating. And you have a wonderful vegetable stock that I have my freezer full of this stuff, and anytime I want stock, I just take out a container of this. While Ilana is still working on her soup, I have another sort of laziness. I do not like peeling winter squash. So what I do is I heat up my oven to about 375, 400, a hot oven. And I take a baking pan, let's move this so you can see what I'm doing. And I put in the baking pan a piece of scrunched up foil. And then I take my squash and I put it in the middle of the scrunched up foil. And the purpose for that is to stop it from rolling around. If you don't have the foil, the squash is like a bowling pin. So the foil keeps it in one place. And you also want to take a sharp knife and prick it in a few places. And the reason for that is just in case the skin bursts, you would have like a big mess in your oven. So you don't want to have the mess in your oven. Put it in the oven for perhaps 15 or 20 minutes and turn it around. And when it looks like it's reasonably, it has a look of being cooked, stick the knife in again. And if the knife goes all the way in, it feels like it's cooked. Take it out and let it cool for a while. When it has cooled, let me again move my camera here. You can then just take a regular sharp knife and you can start peeling off the skin just like you would with any other soft skin vegetable.
That's great to know.
And I did not cut this thing. I could have cut it if I wanted to, but it went in whole, as you can see. And this is sort of, I don't know if you can see it, this is what it looked like when it came out, slightly charred. So that's an alternate method for cooking squash without having to peel it first.
this is what things start looking like. There's the soup, there's the strained liquid, so I did strain it. There's some squash. There's what happens to the apple. It really just sort of disintegrates, which is fine, because all of its flavor is still in the liquid here. Here is the squash. Here's a few pieces of squash. You can see how it just peels right, scoops right out of the peel. So you can scoop it right in there into pot. Now, the next step is blending. If you have a blender, you would be going ahead and throwing all of this into the blender very, very, very carefully because it will be hot. You'll want to leave that center bit out of the lid of your blender so that it doesn't explode. Or if you have an immersion blender, you can do it right in the pot. Now, I happen to adore my immersion blender. That's what, can we see it? That's what this is. It basically looks like a big, again, kind of a scary thing, but it's not terribly dangerous. You stick it right in the pot. All right, just like that, we have a beautiful creamy soup. You get a spoon. You can see the consistency. It's very light, very delicate. Oh, I missed some pieces, but I was in a hurry. Now, let me get a bowl. Now, the recipe does call for a tiny bit of brown sugar, which you can add or leave out. I mean, it's, you know, this is 6 cups of liquid plus all of those vegetables, and it's only calling for a teaspoon of brown sugar. So quite honestly, I'm not sure what that's going to do. I don't think it's going to do much, but there it is. I threw it in. Now, we can ladle it up. See how silky that is. It's just a beautiful soup. And while Judy was talking, I chopped up the remaining apple, and I'm going to use that as if they were croutons, just as a garnish. And that's it. It's a very straightforward, simple soup.